So this is the framing that The Guardian went with in their title. So The Guardian was the article that was being quoted on Twitter that everyone was talking about, with Mick Lynch being discussed here. And they've titled it, Mick Lynch says voters must grow up and see Starmer as the only alternative. And he thinks that getting rid of the Tories is the number one priority, but it does not mean he will give the Labour government a free pass. Now, if we actually look at the quote, let me find it. I support getting rid of this government and I'm a realist. The only government we're going to get as an alternative will be led by Keir Starmer, so people will have to deal with that. People have got to grow up a bit in some senses, which is not what the title would have you believe. So the title, I think, is misleading based upon like the actual statement that he's made here. The actual statement isn't what it's being perceived as, oh, grow up and vote Labour, you ungrateful so-and-sos. It's, well, we have to make do with what we've got, and, in some senses, we're going to have to be pragmatic and realistic. And there's a reason why a lot of the centrist types on Twitter quoted this article and said, oh, well, now all of the leftoids are going to get mad, they're going to cancel Mick Lynch, or they're going to have a hissy fit over Mick Lynch disagreeing with them on voting strategy. And I'm like, no, not really. Because I think that a lot of these centrist types believe that the reason we hate Keir Starmer is A, because he wins, B, because he's not perfect, and C, because he's just not the person who we have an emotional attachment to, because they see us as being like a Corbyn cult, rather than people with a specific political ideology. Because they don't realise that we don't share their ideology in the same way that they think that they're all left-wing. When it actually comes down to left-wing issues, they don't really care, because we saw how they prioritised left-wing economics over, for example, remaining in the European Union. And the reason why a lot of the rhetoric surrounding this from left-wingers, mostly what I've seen has been, this is disappointing from Mick Lynch. We disagree on this, but I support the work that he does, because he's done, regardless of what he believes on electoral politics, his job is to represent the members of the RMT. That is literally his job, and he needs to get them the best economic circumstances that he can be. And he does an excellent job of that, that's why I keep re-electing him. And because he's a trade unionist and a committed socialist and has been his entire life, right? A syndicalist, I believe he is. He's a big supporter of James Connolly. Exactly, he's a trade unionist, he's doing his job. We all understand here on the left that he does share our ideology. That he's not somebody who's cosplaying as being left-wing because their priority is just Tories bad, Labour good. He's somebody who believes in our principles, who believes in our ideology, who shares the goals that we share, but has a different strategy. And that's why most of the comments that I've seen, maybe everyone's seen different ones, most of the comments that I've seen on this has been, I am disappointed in Mick Lynch. I think that he is misguided and wrong in this issue. I still support what he does for the RMT, but we massively disagree in electoral politics, and this is a disappointing read that he doesn't share this opinion, rather than what centrists want us to react with, oh, this is terrible, I can't believe, what a traitor to the movement, Mick Lynch cancelled forever, left card revoked, because none of that's actually happened. None of that's actually anything that we've actually said, really and truly, at least not in larger numbers. Your odds, hashtag it was a scammer account, will be saying shit like that, but we've not been saying that. Because I fundamentally think that he's wrong. I think he's absolutely wrong. One of the other quotes is that we're not going to give him a carte blanche or a blank check to do whatever he likes. Well, you are giving him a carte blanche and a blank check to do whatever he likes, because that's what his governmental majority is going to be. His governing majority that he is going to have, that you're going to tell us that we should be doing, or you're going to have this position of continually wanting us to vote specifically to put him in government to have that unassailable majority, is exactly what's going to give him a carte blanche. You could say, oh, well, we're going to try and pressure him from within the Labour movement. We're going to put pressure on him from the outside from these other mechanisms that we've got. And I'm like, why should he care? Why should he care when he is getting all the money he could ever need from the business interests that now outnumber union support in the Labour Party in terms of funding? Why do you think that your special interest is going to be more important than the special interest of Trevor Chin, who donated to his political campaign and is now one of the biggest backers of the Labour Party, financially at the very least? Why do you think that anything that we could do outward from the Labour Party, outside of using our vote in the interests of our ideological goals, when he's already told us that his only actual position that he takes in terms of policy utility is, what can I recommend that's going to get me elected? Because Keir Starmer doesn't share ideology. He doesn't at all. He joined the Labour Party specifically because this was the party that is the most likely for him to be able to have his political goals, not because he shares the political goals that are central to the Labour Party's movement. Like, I do think it's at least somewhat naivety on Mick Lynch's part, but you know what? I don't actually, contrary to popular belief, on my channel, from my position, I don't hate people who say they'll vote for Labour Party because they want to get the Tories out. I really don't. We disagree. But as long as we share principles and we share ideological goals, if we have differences in strategy, that's fine. I'm not here to be the strategy police, because at the end of the day, I understand why people hate the Conservative Party, specifically because of what they've done, and they just want to see literally anybody else in government. I disagree with you, but I'm happy to countenance your opinion. But what I won't countenance is people who say that somehow we are worse than sincere Conservative voters because we have moral lines that we won't cross crossed, or ideological lines that we think are red lines that aren't to be ceded on. That this is our electoral strategy, that our strategy against neoliberalism and capitalism is somehow less useful than theirs, because their only prism for viewing politics in this country is blue team bad, red team good. Because fundamentally, I know that Mick Lynch doesn't share that position in the same way that I don't share that position. He just thinks that he can exert pressure on the Labour Party from the outside, which I disagree with. Maybe he can exert more pressure on the Labour Party from the outside because his prism that he views this is, well, my members need to get good employment contracts from the Department for Transport, because that's his specific remit. And you know what? Fair enough. If you're a trade union leader and you represent people in rail, maritime and transport, and the incoming government you want to have better dealings with, and you certainly would do from Lou Hague than you would from Mark Harper, then that's what's probably best for his members. But that's in the short term. What about the long term? What about the rest of the economy? What about all of the other macroeconomic choices that they're going to make? Like, these are all questions that are worth asking. And that's why I believe that Mick Lynch is short-sighted. But I'm not going to get mad at him. I'm not going to get mad at somebody who believes all the things that I believe, but thinks that the approach to getting there is different, even if I believe that his approach is wrong. Because I would just disagree. Like, we can have principled and sincere and cordial disagreements with people who we agree with fundamentally in terms of the principles that we share, even if we don't agree on how we get there. Exactly, Neil. Lots of obsessive Tory attackers who don't criticise Starmer as centrists who are hostile to the left and Corbyn in particular. Especially so since their criticism of the Conservative Party is their actions as ministers and not the policies that they hold or the ideology that they believe in, which is fundamentally the problem with the Conservative Party, which we'll get to later. Rather than, they don't believe it's an ideological difference. They believe that everybody is acting pragmatically. They don't believe that, the only people who are ideological to them are people on the far right or the far left, rather than understanding that liberalism in and of itself is an ideology that these people do adhere to and that is failing. Because again, what other macroeconomic policies does he think are going to help? Because the truth is that Keir Starmer will be Prime Minister. He will be Prime Minister. And he's going to get there with the votes of the right-wingers who he's courting with his policy. He's going to get those votes off the back of the people who are lauding him as a potential Prime Minister, to the point which he's having meetings with foreign dignitaries before he's even in government. He's already essentially been coronated as Prime Minister, because he has done enough of a job of convincing the middle-class swing voters in certain constituencies that he is the one that they can vote for. Because in reality, a lot of younger people, a lot of poorer people, a lot of working people's voices don't matter within the current electoral system that we are working under. And if we voted Green or voted Labour, it doesn't really matter. Keir Starmer's already made his utilitarian choice to say, well, if I want to be in government, I've got to appeal to this specific group of swing voters who are already politically engaged, and I'm going to attack the Tories over the Liz Truss mini-budget, and I'm going to placate any naysayers by trying to look as un-left-wing as possible, and by being as un-left-wing as possible. He will get elected on the back of being a centre-right liberal in the vast majority of cases in terms of policy, and appealing to centre-right liberals, under the assumption that he'll get all of the left-wing votes anyway, which he won't. But it doesn't matter if he gets our vote, because he'll still become Prime Minister. Not just because of courting a bunch of people who otherwise previously wouldn't vote for the Labour Party, but on top of that, because the Conservative vote is also split between Reform and Conservative now, because of the failures of the Conservative Party to listen to the concerns of their own voter base. And phrases like, that's the government we're going to get, we have to make the best of that opportunity. I agree. We are going to get the best of the opportunity by engaging in the ways that we can do. I think we should engage both electorally by pressuring them from outside, and also in terms of other kind of pressure, in terms of union participation and protests and direct action, all of those things that both myself and Mick Lynch all agree on in terms of actions that we can take outside of the ballot box. We just disagree specifically on the ballot box agreement. Because he's not wrong. He's literally not wrong that that's the best way of getting opportunities from them. But if you already cede to them that you're going to vote for them, they don't have to court your vote anymore. It's as simple as that. And to say that campaigners of all stripes and identities need to form an alliance to ensure that politicians, regardless of party, deliver a working class agenda going forward, this is all true, regardless of what policy prescriptions they hold. What happens after this Labour government, what comes after them, probably something scary. Well, that's the issue. That's broadly why I think that we need to start building alternative electoral structures now, is because we're going to need that larger base when, in 5 years' time, after Starmer has not properly solved the issues this country is facing, because they have already pigeonholed themselves into explicitly promoting austerity because of Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules, and because of their neglecting to engage in any tax increases on the people who need to be taxed to fix our crumbling infrastructure, our crumbling public services, and for state investment on things that need state investment. People will also believe that the Red Party are bad too, and they'll blame them not because they are part of the establishment, quote unquote, but they'll blame them because they see them as being the left wing failing, because that's the broad societal prescription people hand towards the Labour Party, even if they don't engage in policy that is left wing. It's the same reason why people thought that Blair crashed the economy, because he was too frivolous with spending, or Brown did it because he was too frivolous frivolous with spending, when the opposite is true, when Blair allowed the economy to crash because he was too right-wing, but because the Red Party were doing the right-wing politics, left-wing politics as an entity was blamed for it, rather than the Tories and red ties that were the Blairites, at least in economic policy. And that's the problem. What happens in 5 years' time when the left-wing party, quote-unquote, has solved none of the problems, after 14 years of the problems caused by the right-wing party, quote-unquote, and the far-right party are the ones promising real solutions by tackling all of the myriad factors that kind of been left to the wayside in both Conservative and Labour policy platforms. And that's scary, because Reform UK have a lot of clout now. Imagine if Nigel Farage campaigned for them in the next election. It's a scary thought about them being an electoral force. And unless we can pressure Labour to be better in government by promising them electoral failures if they don't, when they've given their word, essentially, that that's all that matters to them, because the nuts and bolts of policy is geared around what's electable, quote-unquote, even in their own minds, of course, not in reality, because plenty of the things that we want are electable. In terms of economic policy, in terms of macroeconomics, people want these things, despite the fact that we keep being told that wanting nationalised water is Trotskyism or something, when 70% of the country are apparently Trotskyist now, because that's how many people think water should be back in public ownership. This is the problem that I have, is that if you just cede your vote, that never changes. And that power base has to be built now, because unless we have a big platform on all of the current affairs programs for somebody from some other left-wing party, I don't know who it is, as long as they are in some way progressive, like the Green Party is my party of choice at the moment, regardless of the many flaws that I've recounted on this channel previously. Unless we have some strong, robust criticism that gets platformed in a strong manner off the back of strong electoral successes leading up to the next election. Because remember, the BBC pick who they choose as panellists based upon what the result was like of the last general election in terms of voter share. If we cede all our ground to Labour, that alternative platform never exists, and we'll sit in the same position where we are now, where a Green Party member gets on the Question Time panel once in the entire electoral cycle, twice in the electoral cycle. We've had 3 trade unionists for the entirety of the last electoral cycle. There's no left-wing voice on Question Time or these other programmes, and unless we have a strong movement representing our interests to force ourselves into the conversation, the dial will never move. The left-wing, quote-unquote, in terms of the red team will have failed, and people will start looking for alternative solutions. And when they do want that alternative solution, they need to have heard what ours is. They need to know what we believe in, and they need to know that something that is there other than what is being served up to them by the 2 major parties and any minor party from the right wing as well. That's what the strategy should be. And just because Mick Lynch doesn't share that belief, I'm not going to go mad. I'm not going to chastise him for it. We just disagree. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.